Could you explain a little bit about, based on your research, what could we expect theoretically during a magnetic pole reversal? And it's not exactly the same thing as the actual Earth's crust shifting and
Yeah,
reversing, right?
this Earth displacement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that uh, my inner intuition is telling me to be cautious because we never know the date, and we never know when something's going to happen. We just go with the flow. We know something's happening. So here's three solid facts I can give you. Yes, the ocean levels rise. That's why you have every historical a magnetic excursion we find, there is a pulse water melt. Where does 90% of the world's population live? On the coast. Most of the time, even in antiquity, where was Atlantis found? And especially if you want to go back and talk about the Lemurian civilization, which may have been attached, that's a whole other story. But though most civilizations find themselves along the coastline. That's where we find the story of Noah's flood. We find different epics of floods. There's even a Chinese mythos that I read just the other night. Can't remember the name, by the love of God of me, but it explained the same exact method of a massive flood came and wiped away everybody, and there was only a few survivors. So, I know that a major flood happens every time. It just causes the poles to melt rapidly, because when you put a super tropical zone of heat and wind on top of an icy area, what you gonna get? You're gonna get a lot of water running down the hill. That's a certainty. B, I expect immense levels of radiation poisonings. Maybe where we might see huge genetic leaps in mankind. Not sure if anybody is if people want to follow the ancient astronaut theory, but I believe a lot of the huge jumps in our genetics comes from the lack thereof of a magnetic protective field, or the Van Allen belt. We've already seen that shrunk by one half of its size in the last 50 years. So we know there's more radiation penetration into the lower atmosphere, and skin cancer rates compared to 100 years ago are through the roof. Mind you, medicine statistics have changed through that time period, so we have more information rolling around all around us. So we have to take that in effect. But I know for certain that the radiation Van Allen belt is going to slowly disappear. That ozone hole we heard about in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which has gone away because of the shifting magnetic fields and how our fields are interacting with each other. All that's going to slowly disappear. We're going to see weird genetic mutations probably, for animals to people to babies. It's going to be interesting. Lots of skin cancer. That's going to be a big one. We're already seeing that everywhere. Another reason for chemtrail spraying, that's to help create a more resonant magnetic field, in my belief, to help keep some normalcy with us. But that's the big second thing that's going to happen when everything does culminate at the finale. The third thing, which is ultimately the most important, it's going to be how to maintain a source of livelihood / I don't even know how to phrase it properly, food, shelter, all that. When you have a huge shift in magnetic variancy, and you know that our weather follows the poles to a cusp, then you're going to see that people who are never prepared for major winter events are suddenly just dropping dead, dying, which we're seeing all over the U.S. Last year, Texas had a major freeze that crippled their power grid. We're seeing major freezes in Europe now that they're not used to. That has there's a report in 2017 out of 3,700 independent farmers interviewed. 1,300 farmers went under and down because they are not used to these extreme cold events or major flood events. That's the three major things I can tell you that's going to happen. Now, will the sun have a huge ejecta come from it? Not certain. I know I've heard plenty of the micronova theories. I like to admire those and look into it, but I want to follow what I know happens and how it happens.
What about a complete loss of power and pretty much destruction of our global power grid?
That's a
I'm pretty
certainty.
sure. Yeah, pretty sure that that would be a part of that as well, right?
So we're going into a major solar cycle right now. Our uptick is compared to our last one is already out there. We've already had an X-class solar flare on our first as our second year of the solar cycle, and we're not having hit the peak of the type of flares we get. So as our magnetic field migrates and weakens, because we're right about the 50% point in my opinion. They're just not talking about it. If you follow the SWARM is the European National Space Agency's magnetic field tracker. You can get some articles and glimpses of what's happening, but we're basically at a point where our magnetic field is as weak as it's ever been. We're at a point now that they're so scared of EMP blasting our Earth that in 2019, the Trump administration put into an executive order to upgrade and update our solar power grid. To resist EMP blasts. So I haven't looked into other governments what they're doing, but if a major nation like the United States is preparing for a weakened magnetic field and weakened anti-radiation fields, then they're fully cognizant and aware that something big's happening. We need to prepare, but when we have no magnetic field left, or we're at like a 15% ratio, and we get hit by an X-class solar flare, those little gadgets, gizmos, whatever you want to call them, they're all going to be gone. I mean, unless you have an awesome radiation. I know you've probably seen them, probably on YouTube or survival things. It's like a radiation box, a little black box. It's about 16 inches thick. Yeah. That's the only thing I could tell you. Unless you're an electrical engineer and know how to wire something after something goes down.